You're listening to Potato Pasta, the best stories from the internet narrated by a human. This writing prompt was originally posted by user Annihilator1. Humans are the proverbial sleeping giant, and thus make remarkably good deterrents. A common tactic of the Galactic Federation is to simply call in a human warship such as the USS, f*** around and find out, and simply let it sit nearby. Peace talks happen within the week. The response is by SirPiecemaker. I'm sure you heard the general concept before. We finally reached the stars. We met alien life, a galactic community even. They took a quick glance at our history and came to an uncomfortable realization. These hairless primates spent a lot of time killing each other. We'd rather not see them unite and fight one of us. We were nevertheless received quite warmly by the Galactic Federation and became a rather premier peacekeeping force. We didn't mind. We were able to get past our infighting some time ago, and this was a nice change of pace. We didn't have to fight anymore, but a small primal part of us was never able to give it up. Our ships were inevitably built for the possibility of combat, something we did so much it was a part of us no matter how peaceful we tried to be. Sleeping giants, we were sometimes called, a nice reference to our own myths, but every now and then, someone wakes us up. "Mothership Theta, come in," I said into the communicator. A screen in front of me flashed to life as my call was received. The head of security for the sector was on the other side. He, she, they were an interesting alien, far less human-like than we expected in our media. They looked more like an amoeba.
Mothership Theta,
the alien responded. I smacked the communicator a couple of times to fix the translation protocols.
"Hear you loud and clear,"
the alien continued, this time in perfect English. "This is the USS around. We swung by the Kaliev sector as you requested. The intel was on point. Some Geneva warships, if you can call them that," I added under my breath, "were gathering near the Sigma 3X moon. All signs indicate they were planning a raid on the refineries."
I see. And?
"They were persuaded not to," I replied in an almost bored tone.
Excellent. Where did they go afterwards? We should probably keep an eye on them.
I said and scratched behind my neck. "They're still orbiting the moon." A moment of uneasy silence followed as the alien pressed several buttons, I assumed to bring up the scans of the area.
USS around. Please repeat. We have no signatures of any ships in that area.
"Yeah, I think you'll need extra magnification on those scans."
What for?
"To see the bodies floating in space," I said and inspected my fingernails. There was a perceivable blurb of unknown noise coming from the alien. Not something that could be translated. Not something that needed to be translated.
"Oh,"
the alien finally said. "I can provide logs that clearly show they shot first."
"That won't be necessary, Captain. Your reputation is reliable enough."
"As you wish. Do you have another assignment for us?"
"Not at the moment, Captain. But, may I ask a question? A personal one. Not in an official capacity,"
the alien said carefully. "Sure," I said and sat up straight in my chair. It was a nice change of pace from the cold, detached exchanges or orders.
"Why is your ship called the around? I believe that is a slur in your tongue, is it not?"
the alien said and slightly tilted its upper half. "Ah," I chuckled. "Short for around, find out. An Earth saying of sorts. One the Geneva warships were clearly not familiar with. It means that if you around, meaning to behave improperly in a risky manner, you will find out."
"Find out what, Captain?"
"Why you don't around." The following response is by user AuriExarch. Times of peace are best cherished when they come. Likewise, fought for when they are lost. Peace was maintained in many ways when it brought itself to the galaxy at large. Diplomacy was the favorite of any relatively advanced species. They had learned through great effort what sorts of terrible things happen to those who move to war as their first option. Or their only. That was not to say they were soft. Far from it. Much as they avoided it, no civilization made it to be a truly interplanetary presence without a few scarred armor plates. A few rainbow-cast superheated shells, metal on metal, copper to bronze to iron to steel. Sharpened, honed, then sheathed for the good of all. until they are needed again. Humans were a relatively small grouping among the galactic stage. They were from a moon orbiting a planet, the moon of Tyrnia, orbiting the husk of Solitaire. They brought with them many species and folded yet more into their empire as it grew. Always the open hand first, never the drawn blade. When pressed, however, the Tyrnia faction was the de facto military presence in the galaxy. They used a blend of magic and technology refined to such a sharp point that challenging them was seen tantamount to suicide. Their ships cut through space as if imposing themselves on it, blocky in the same way their armory was. In their early days, they had been challenged, surely, time and again, their motions to keep the peace rebuffed. Placating words crumpled and thrown to the ground. It was seldom their wrath was truly tested, but when it was, continents shifted, planets cracked, suns rippled in distorted waves of fire that dwarfed them, the cosmic lights of the very firmament. It was impossible to stand against such ferocity once unleashed. So impossible that a single TNF warship was enough to lay hostility to rest. Whether it was the fear of a stray macro cannon round raising the ire of the rumbling, armored dreadnought, or simply the economic and diplomatic impact of ruffling those self-same scaled plates. When the TNF Prosperity Assured jumped into orbit around the planet, everything went still. A fleet of Anchor ships ceased their salvo of the planetary defenses around the Gaian planet that they so coveted. The defenders limped back to stations recuperating. The Galactic Federation ship that had called upon the Prosperity even shied away. The Prosperity dwarfed every ship in system, every 10 combined. As the distortion of the ship field faded away, fire ignited on any number of symbols wrought on the surface, turning the utilitarian ship into a blazing icon of technological and magical might. Such was its presence that those on the surface of the planet found their eyes drawn toward it, even had it not drifted between them and their moon. A klaxon rang out, entering the minds of every living being within the system and radiating across every technological communication channel available to either faction.
Cease hostility and come to terms, or terms will be managed for you.
The following response is by user IML_42. FAA-FO unit was the most mind-numbingly boring post in all of the Galactic Federation. The ship's role was less that of a warship and more like that of a big orange traffic cone. A warning of danger. It is no surprise then that the FAA-FO ship, literally a huge orange traffic cone, came to orbit the planet Dentra to assist in deterring the Dentrites from declaring war upon the Baronites, an Earth-allied power.
Can't we at least fire a warning shot?
Whined Lieutenant Nelson.
Back in the day, they used to get a shot across the bow. Come on, Major.
You know our role, Lieutenant Nelson,
said Major Smith.
We are here as a show of force. We are meant to deter battle, not promote it.
This was not what Lieutenant Nelson had in mind when he joined the Galactic Federation. He had daydreamed of starship battles and explosions, feats of battle acumen and showcases of might. Instead, he had been relegated to a life of leisure, forever staring out the window at distant planets, the denizens of which he'd never even meet. Work in the FAA-FO unit was truly boring.
We are peacekeepers, Nelson,
said Lieutenant Jackson.
We have enough guns and missiles on this ship alone to make the great creator blush. The point of having all these things is that we not have to use them. The Federation is safer because we show restraint.
Well, sure, but hasn't anyone ever, fought FAA-FO unit?
Asked Lieutenant Nelson.
Ever since I've joined, we've done nothing more than park in orbit and stare.
The new guy wants some action,
said Lieutenant Jackson to Major Smith with a knowing chuckle.
He wants to know what happens when they fuck around, sir.
Well, Lieutenant Nelson,
said Major Smith thoughtfully,
it is rare, but it does happen. And in the end, it's right there in the name, isn't it?
Before Major Smith could finish, an alarm went off in the bridge and a video transmission illuminated the screen. It was Anthune the Baronite representative on Dentra.
Major Smith, the peace talks have broken down,
he said matter-of-factly.
The Dentrites have launched 17 warships that are headed to planet Baron.
They will reach low orbit in 5 minutes. You must not allow a single ship to exit Dentra's atmosphere. The future of the planet Baran depends on you.
You can count on us, Honorable Thune. FAAFO unit is on it,
said Major Smith. The crew immediately went to work. Crewmen sat at consoles, pounding away at keyboards, calling out orders and estimates of time to engagement. Lieutenant Nelson couldn't believe his luck. Finally, a battle worth his time. He recalled images from the films he'd watched back home of homing missiles and crosshairs. He felt a rush of adrenaline and pride in the work he was about to do for his planet and its allies. Just as Thune had estimated, the first Dentrite warship came into view in under 5 minutes. Battle preparations had been made, missiles were loaded, and the Great Cone's shield defenses had been raised. Lieutenant Nelson manned the launch station console and awaited orders from Major Smith.
Hold,
said Major Smith.
Hold. Wait until the last of the warships is in our line of sight.
I count 15 bogeys, sir,
said Lieutenant Jackson.
That's 16,
said Lieutenant Nelson, his heart lodged in his throat. His fingers hovered and trembled ever so slightly above those 2 red buttons he so desperately longed to press.
Stand ready, Nelson,
said Major Smith.
Eyes on 17 confirmed,
said Lieutenant Jackson.
That's a go, Nelson,
said Major Smith.
Launch on my count. 3, 2, 1. Unleash hail.
Lieutenant Nelson pressed the 2 red buttons with such vigor that he thought he may break his console, after which a flurry of missiles and rockets flew forth from the great orange cone with a speed and ferocity Lieutenant Nelson had never before imagined. The red and white glare from the rockets illuminated the dark blue of space and shone with the intensity of low-orbit stars. The explosion on impact was so bright that Lieutenant Nelson had to avert his gaze. Before he could even take a breath, it was all over.
Dendrite bogeys eliminated, sir. That is 17 confirmed kills,
said Lieutenant Jackson.
Great work, crew. A job well done,
said Major Smith with pride.
That was it?
Said Lieutenant Nelson in disbelief.
17 warships blown up with the press of a button.
2 buttons,
said Lieutenant Jackson helpfully.
That's so anticlimactic,
cried Lieutenant Nelson.
This isn't the movies, son,
said Major Smith with a paternal tone, even though he was maybe 5 years older than Lieutenant Nelson at most.
Our might is unmatched across the galaxy. That is the whole purpose of FAAFO unit. If a planet f***s around, they find out.
Lieutenant Nelson couldn't help but be disappointed. He had joined the galaxy's most powerful military unit, only to learn that he was playing war games with cheat codes. Unlimited ammo, shield buff, never-ending money. What was the point of it all?
So am I to understand that I'll never be in a fair firefight again?
Asked Lieutenant Nelson.
That was fair,
said Lieutenant Jackson.
That's right,
said Major Smith.
How was that fair?
Asked Lieutenant Nelson.
We brought the cone. We warned them,
said Major Smith. Lieutenant Nelson just sighed in response. FAAFO unit was the most mind-numbingly boring post in all of the Galactic Federation. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. If you enjoy my narrations, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you want to know when new videos come out, hit the bell and make sure you select all notifications. I know it's annoying to ask, but it really does help the channel reach more people. Thank you.